Bueno, muy buenos días. En nombre de la Cámara de Representantes, también del Parlamento del Uruguay, agradecemos a la Embajada de Gran Bretaña, en especial al embajador, y también a la participación y colaboración de Westminster Foundation, que nos han estado también acompañando en estos últimos meses, en este proceso de colaboración para, bueno, profundizar nuestros procesos de modernización parlamentaria. El objetivo de esta reunión de hoy es, bueno, hemos firmado hace unos minutos un acuerdo de colaboración entre el Parlamento y la Embajada, con el objetivo de, en primer lugar, poder implementar una colaboración en relación a una consulta pública que está llevando adelante el Parlamento sobre niños, adolescentes, entornos digitales e inteligencia artificial. El Uruguay tomó como ejemplo una consulta que realizó Reino Unido hace unos meses. En esta instancia, como en otras, el Parlamento británico ha sido un modelo y un pionero y un ejemplo para nuestro Parlamento. Y también hemos acordado una colaboración con la Fundación, que hoy nos acompaña virtualmente, que esperamos poder continuar luego de esta primera instancia formal. Ya hemos tenido otras, luego este webinar, que será el primero de otros muchos, que nos permitirán, bueno, intercambiar experiencias y aprender de lo que la Fundación, bueno, es experta. El Parlamento uruguayo está siempre muy dispuesto no solamente a hacer esas modernizaciones cumpliendo con la función que les ha encomendado la ciudadanía, la modernización para cumplir mejor su función, y también siempre ha estado muy dispuesto a aprender de otras experiencias, y sobre todo de otros que llevan un camino recorrido más adelante que el nuestro. Así que, sin más, agradecerles mucho a la Fundación Westminster y también a la embajada y al embajador, a quien le doy la palabra ahora.
Muchísimas gracias. Es un gran placer darles la bienvenida a este seminario que forma parte de la cooperación establecida a través del Memorándum de Entendimiento entre la Embajada Británica y la Cámara de Representantes de Uruguay. Este acuerdo refleja nuestro compromiso compartido con el fortalecimiento de las instituciones democráticas, la promoción de la participación ciudadana y el abordaje de las oportunidades y los desafíos que plantean las nuevas tecnologías. Quisiera extender mi más sincero agradecimiento a la Cámara de Representantes y en particular a su presidente, Rodrigo Goñi, por su colaboración y liderazgo en el impulso de esta importante agenda. También deseo reconocer y agradecer a la Westminster Foundation for Democracy por su valiosa contribución a esta iniciativa. A través de su experiencia y perspectiva internacional, la Foundation nos está ayudando a explorar cómo los parlamentos pueden aprovechar con éxito las tecnologías digitales y la inteligencia artificial al tiempo que fortalecen los procesos democráticos. Asimismo, quisiera agradecer a la Universidad de Cambridge a través de su Partnership for Education por aportar a esta colaboración su conocimiento y experiencia de nivel mundial, especialmente en temas relacionados con las plataformas digitales y la seguridad en línea de niños, niñas y adolescentes. El seminario de hoy nos brinda una oportunidad para aprender de experiencias internacionales, intercambiar ideas y reflexionar sobre cómo la innovación tecnología puede contribuir a instituciones democráticas más eficaces, inclusivas y capaces de dar respuesta a las necesidades de la ciudadanía. Mientras exploramos el papel de la digitalización y la inteligencia artificial en el trabajo parlamentario, también debemos mantener el foco en una de nuestras prioridades compartidas más importantes: garantizar que los niños, niñas y jóvenes puedan beneficiarse de las oportunidades que ofrece el mundo digital al mismo tiempo que estén protegidos de sus riesgos. Este memorándum se suma a la creciente cooperación entre el Reino Unido y Uruguay en materia de inteligencia artificial, gobernanza y estándares éticos, y demuestra nuestra determinación compartida de preparar a nuestras instituciones para el futuro. Gracias una vez más a todos nuestros socios y participantes por hacer posible este evento. Les deseo un seminario productivo y energizador y espero con interés los intercambios y debates que tendremos a continuación. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. ¿Tú, Silvia?
Bueno, muy buenos días a todos y a todos. Muchas gracias a la Embajada Británica, al embajador, a todas las autoridades. Esta actividad parte de una convicción sencilla, aunque exigente. La transformación digital y la inteligencia artificial no constituyen solamente un asunto técnico, interpelan la forma en que los parlamentos representan, legislan, controlan, escuchan a la ciudadanía y cuidan las condiciones democráticas en las que se toman las decisiones. Agradecemos esta posibilidad de intercambio con la experiencia que ustedes tienen, porque es una condición de época que nos toca a todos los países, a todos los parlamentos, a todas las democracias. Entonces, sin más, antes saludar y agradecer a quienes van a ser nuestros ponentes, Franklin de Vries, Fotis Fitsilis y Luis Quimeir, para abordar entonces estas experiencias de lo que es incorporar tecnología, inteligencia artificial en los parlamentos y en la toma de decisión. Muchas gracias.
No, sin más, le pasamos la palabra entonces al primero de los panelistas. A ver si reciben bien allá. Yep, please come in early.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. President, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, esteemed members of Parliament, colleagues and friends, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar today on digital transformation and artificial intelligence in the Parliament of Uruguay, organised by the Westminster Foundation for Democracy in collaboration with Bussola Tech. My name is Early Taylor. I'm the Regional Director for the Americas at the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. For those of you who are not familiar with us, I'll just say a few brief words about the Foundation. WFD is the UK's democracy support organisation with over 30 years of experience of strengthening democratic institutions worldwide. So we work with democratic actors.
Sorry,
can you hear me okay?
We have a problem, I think, with the translation.
Okay, no problem.
We need, okay. ¿Quién necesita auriculares?
Tengo todos los auriculares, lo estábamos usando. Trae.
Shall I start again?
¿Ya está? Yes. Please, a minute.
No problem.
Sorry, early. We got too excited to start, and we were without interpretation. Well,
No problem. I will start again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, is we good to go? Excellent. Thank you. So, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, and esteemed members of Parliament, colleagues, and friends, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar on digital transformation and artificial intelligence in the Parliament of Uruguay, organised by the Westminster Foundation for Democracy in collaboration with Bussola Tech. My name is Ellie Taylor. I'm the Regional Director for the Americas at the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. And for those of you who are not familiar with us as an organisation, I'll say a few brief words. WFD is the UK's democracy support organisation. We have over 30 years' experience in strengthening democratic institutions and political systems worldwide. So we partner with key democratic actors, parliaments, political parties, civil society organisations and others, with the aim of building inclusive, accountable and transparent democratic systems. So we bring together institutions with the people they serve, and we aim to build lasting coalitions for change that solve concrete problems and build trust. Our work on digitalization, digital transformation, and artificial intelligence has evolved significantly over recent years, and we are now a recognized player globally in this space. In 2024, in collaboration with a number of partners, we launched the Guidelines for Artificial Intelligence in Parliaments, which is a resource to support parliaments in the responsible, ethical, and effective use of AI technology. And those guidelines are available in 10 languages, including Spanish. And earlier this year, WFD launched a new resource on cybersecurity for parliaments. So this resource maps the cyber threats facing legislatures, it translates technical concepts, and it offers practical implementation guidance to parliaments to take action to protect their cybersecurity. So we can share both of those resources as electronic versions. We can do that in the chat here or perhaps through the British Embassy after this webinar. So continuing now to the subject of our gathering today, we have the next 90 minutes or so together to discuss digital transformation and the use of AI in the Parliament of Uruguay. We'll have a few presentations and we will spend perhaps the next 60 minutes on those, and then we will have space for questions and answers afterwards. So I'm delighted to be joined by three distinguished speakers today. Firstly, we have Franklin de Vreze, the Head of Practice for Accountability at the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. Franklin will make two presentations, one on regular digital technologies and one on artificial intelligence. And each of these have their own value in institutional development of a parliament. The first presentation will speak more specifically to how technology can improve the effectiveness of committee work and citizen engagement, and that will draw on the experience of the UK Westminster Parliament and also the Scottish Parliament. And Franklin's second presentation will elaborate on use cases and the guidelines for artificial intelligence in Parliament. We will also hear from our colleague Fotis Vitsalis, Head of Documentation at the Hellenic Parliament. He will speak about the rationale and approaches for digital maturity assessment for Parliament. And we will also hear from our colleague Luis Quimeid, Executive Director at Bussola Tech. Many of you will know him already. He will talk to us about the success factors of digital transformation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Franklin to take us through his first presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Early. And good morning, everyone, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ambassador, honorable members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues. Thank you very much for joining, and I'm very honored to be able to address you today on a topic which is very dear to me, which is around modernization and digitalization of parliaments. And I'm also very pleased to be joined here by two colleagues and two friends, Dr. Fotis Vitselis and Mr. Louis Kimait, which will speak in a little bit. So it's always good to be in a good company and in very knowledgeable and expert company. And as my colleague earlier mentioned, I will indeed speak on two topics which are related, but which are nevertheless different. One is indeed around digital technologies. I call them regular technologies, like many of us know them. That will be the topic of my first presentation. And then later on, I will speak specifically about AI and what we can learn from the introduction of AI. So let me start with a first presentation on how digital technology can improve the effectiveness of committee work and can also improve public engagement. So if you just give me one moment to start sharing the screen. And I will indeed speak of the experience in two parliaments, so UK Westminster Parliament and the Scottish Parliament. There is a bit of overlap, but you will see there are also quite very distinct features and very distinct practical tools and practical initiatives which have evolved over the years. So, and I hope that will be of interest to you. So when we speak about parliamentary committees in Westminster Parliament and their effectiveness, what does determine the function of parliamentary committees? You're very clear aware of this. I just want to mention it briefly because it has a direct effect on how technology can be used. So first of all, of course, committees need to have a clear remit and roles. They need to have a stable membership, an effective committee chair, cross-party cooperation where possible. And then very important, it's important for committees to look at how they can function in a transparent way with various communication and participation strategies, making use of the latest technologies. Committees also need to be responsive in terms of their goals, but at the same time be flexible. It's important for committees to be inclusive and then open to inputs from civil society and external groups. And this will very much shape the way how technology is being used in the functioning of committees. So when we speak about the effectiveness of committees and the influence of committees, I think I would like to rely on some of the research which was conducted here at Westminster for three different types of influence. The one is the direct government acceptance of committee recommendations. The second type of influence of committees is related to influencing the policy debate and bringing issues to the public space. And the third way of influence role of committees is providing expertise. So I'm going to speak briefly to these three topics and also where technology plays a role. So first, with regards to how the UK government accepts committee recommendations. There has been extensive research done to that through these reports which are mentioned here. And what we see is that, for instance, in 2013, at that moment in time, when House of Commons select committees made recommendations, 40% of these recommendations were accepted by the government. In 2021, there was a research done with regards to post-legislative scrutiny and the recommendations of committees on post-legislative scrutiny. Also here, 40% of the recommendations were accepted. When we look a couple of years later in 2025, and then specifically to the Scottish Parliament, there we see that a couple of years later, 60% of the recommendations have been accepted by the Scottish Government with regards to post-legislative scrutiny. So how can that be measured? So one of the key issues to mention here is that this acceptance rate is about the acceptance within 2 months after a committee has issued a report. Sometimes we see that the government might indeed accept committee recommendations later after these 2 months as well. The key issue here is, with regards to technology, is making use of recommendation trackers and recommendation databases. And these trackers and databases, they can be specific to a committee, or they can be used parliament-wide throughout the institution. Of course, in many parliaments, there is being made use of Excel spreadsheets to track that. But I think a better way to do that is to make this tracking mechanism open access, so that the public, journalists, and other groups have the possibility to track this. And so here on the right-hand side, you have a screenshot of the recommendation tracker of the National Audit Office with regards to its audit findings and the acceptance of the audit findings. So this can be followed live by the public as well as Parliament. A second issue in terms of influence of committees is influence on the policy debate, spotlighting issues, or possibly altering policy priorities. So what role does technology play here? First of all, there is the use of social media to promote committee activity and also key evidence, findings, and recommendations to the public and to journalists. And it's important to note that each of the committees in the UK Parliament have their own social media accounts, which they use very actively. And you see here, for instance, on the screen, these are screenshots from Instagram used by different committees. This is the one in the middle is the Science, Innovation and Technology Committee, which did an inquiry into the use of treatments, beauty treatments, facial injections, hair extensions, and to what extent people were aware of the risks related to that. So they did an inquiry on that, they published a report, but they were very active in promoting that report through their own social media channels. Then the use of infographics is also important to catch the eye of anyone scrolling social media. And of course, it's also important to make the findings more accessible, as for instance, in the second screenshot, which is from the Environment, Food and Rural Development Committee. A third way in which committees can have influence is through providing expert evidence and making the expert evidence widely available. Technology has shaped this to a very large extent already. And since 2020, committees in the Westminster Parliament are using virtual evidence taking. So that means witnesses and people invited to testify for the committee have no longer to travel to Westminster, but they can contribute virtually. This enables, it's more practical, but it also enables to ensure witness diversity. So to have people from different backgrounds, from different genders, from different geographical backgrounds as well, to provide evidence to the committee. So distance is no longer an issue. There is also increasing use of what is called lived experiences. So actually making sure that the experience of people directly affected by a policy or a legislation is brought directly to the committee. And also for that, online forums are being used. So that's with the Westminster Parliament. A couple of words with regards to the Scottish Parliament committees, how they're using technology. There are 15 committees in the Scottish Parliament. They have a number of functions which are very similar to Westminster Parliament's in terms of legislation as well as in terms of oversight. Now, how did these consultations take place in the Scottish Parliament? Initially, in the early phase, the mechanisms were very much web-based announcements of consultation and publication of reports. Initially, there was no use of social media. The views were sought of people which we call the usual suspects, people which usually show up for these events and have an outspoken opinion. Very often it was an all-male panel, and there was not really witness diversity at the initial phases. It was also a very formalized process with a lot of jargon being used. Inquiries lasted 6 to 9 months, resulting in very extensive reports, which probably not many people were reading. Submissions were provided by email or by Word, Microsoft Word, again, and then published often in PDF. There was little or no thought given to communication or participation strategies, except an occasional field visit and a press release for the written press. And then all committee meetings took place in person in Edinburgh in a committee room. So a very traditional approach, which has lasted for many years. But then came the pandemic, which changed everything. And so in a couple of days, actually in a matter of a week, the whole Parliament, the Scottish Parliament, switched around its way of operating. And so committees were meeting online, also holding public hearings and a lot of testimonies. And this is, as you probably are aware of, the perspective from a parliamentary staff, a parliamentary clerk, on the one hand, the screen, and on the right-hand side, actually, how the working environment has changed at that moment in time. So what is the role of technology today in the Scottish Parliament? What has changed? So with regards to consultation and participation, we see there is an emphasis on an opportunity for online petitions, which can be submitted to the Scottish Parliament website and shared and signed up. There are also what is called people's panels. So these are online focus groups where people are invited as a representative group from society to give their views on specific policy questions. And then also specific to the Scottish Parliament website is the space which is called Citizen Space, as a consultation platform for electronic submissions of views. So they often have what is called a call for views, calls for evidence, call for information, and this can then be uploaded through Citizen Space. And so Citizen Space is serving all 15 committees of the Scottish Parliament. They had 219 calls for views in this last session of Parliament, with 145,000 responses. So it's quite substantial number. So Citizen Space has led to, indeed, we can say, an increased participation from the public in these call for views, more efficiency in parliamentary administration to process these 145,000 responses, and also allowed for more flexibility in how to approach it, how to organize it, how to time it, and how to analyze the responses. Now, a question which had to be answered was, of course, what happens if we get overwhelmed by responses? What if there is such a high interest in a call for views, often because it's a very polarizing topic? How can we make sure that all voices are taken into account? Or when there is a specific bill being tabled in Parliament, which might be quite detailed and can use a lot of technical language, how can we find meaningful ways to engage the public? And so the Scottish Parliament has addressed these questions by developing a double approach in their outreach. On the one hand, short surveys versus detailed consultation. So short surveys, usually 17 quantitative sessions, so multiple choice questions, and then one more qualitative question. Detailed consultations or 29 qualitative questions, very elaborate on specific parts of a bill or a policy. And then participants have the possibility to actually choose between these two ways of interacting, and in that way provide feedback to the committee. And each of these have actually quite detailed outreach mechanisms. Another way of outreach and communication is actually currently a trialing, something which they try now for the first time, is allowing citizens to send in videos. Because some people might not be willing or able to provide long written testimony, so they ask people, send us a video with your comments, and then they have the technology to actually analyze these videos and produce transcripts and the main findings. They're also trialing another tool, which is called Conesso, for a kind of targeted engagement with external bodies and individuals in specific regions. So this is geographically organized and geographically focused to enable outreach to these communities and individuals in that region. And then they are currently also trialing another tool, which is called Your Priorities, for civic engagement of committee work, specifically for committee programs, for any questions which members of the Scottish Parliament can ask government ministers. So what we see is that when a member of Parliament is submitting a written question or an oral question to a minister in the government, it's not just their individual personal question. This is very much based upon the input they have received from hundreds and sometimes thousands of citizens through this tool, Your Priorities. So what is Your Priorities? It's an online discussion tool focused on generating ideas, commenting, debating, and also rating ideas in a structured manner. So people can rate an idea and then they can vote it up or they can vote it down. And that gives it a kind of weight. This is something which is used around the world by various organizations, local councils, cities authorities, even the World Bank. And so this is now adapted to the context for the Scottish Parliament. And I think we can say it's a top-rated tool for digital participation. And in the Scottish context, it's also made user-friendly using simple user interface for light touch engagement. And so you have here again on screen a couple of examples. There is, for instance, a question with regards to giving the police powers to stop, search, and seize certain fireworks, which can be voted up. As you see here, 887 people said yes, 195 said no. Then on specific bills as well, people can give comments why they support the bill or why they oppose or disagree with a bill. And also that can be done through this platform. A couple of specific tools related to diversity issues. First, there is now the routine use of Zoom, specifically to enable remote witnesses, which otherwise would not make it to Edinburgh, to actually provide their information and their comments. Second, when the Scottish Parliament puts out a document, they use what is called the Hemingway Accessibility Checker. So in other words, that is a program to check whether the language being used is readable, is accessible, is understandable by the audience. And so you have here on screen an example of how that looks like. So when something is in dark red, it means it's very hard to read. When it is in yellow, it's just hard to read. And then in purple, it also gives a simpler alternative. So again, that is a way to reach out to those communities and people which otherwise would not really engage with a typical political debate. They're also trialing currently WhatsApp for submissions of views of people which are deaf or are hearing impaired. So specific outreach to that. And there are also in the Scottish Parliament a lot of directions, and also information in BSL, British Sign Language. So again, quite a strong focus on diversity. And then a couple of words on communications. What are the means being used here? We have, of course, a lot of social media accounts on X, Facebook, YouTube for different committees. There is also a lot of work going into data analytics, understanding the feedback, understanding how far it takes them, what has been the uptake of the various channels being used. There is a greater use of video clips and professionalized graphics to make something visual to the public. There is also trialing at the moment of electronic newsletters for committees and by committees. And so you have here on the right-hand side on screen a quarterly newsletter of the Committee on Delegated Powers and Law Reform, the July 2025 edition. So these newsletters for committees have become quite institutionalized. And then also the more regular use of Teams and WhatsApp groups during committee sessions to enable communication off screen between different members and staff. Something specific also to the Scottish Parliament is the use of word cloud. So if they get hundreds or thousands of responses from the public with regards to a bill, for instance, they try to capture what are the key words of feedback of the citizens. So here the question was, do you support the bill? Yes. What were the most common words used in the responses? Or do you support the bill? No. What were the most common words in the responses being used here? So that is a visual way for members of parliament to actually very quickly capture what are the main concerns of citizens. I spoke about the infographics which are being used. And so here we have a couple of examples on screen as well. One is from visualization of the priorities of the budget of the Scottish government in terms of expenditures as well as in terms of resources, where the resources are coming from. There is a visualization of the number of days needed in order for a bill to go through the legislative process and get royal assent. And then there is the question of use of different languages. And also here we have a visualization about how many members of the Scottish Parliament have repeated the oath or the affirmation in another language, again, doing this in a visual way. So to conclude, a couple of words here on what comes next in terms of regular digitalization. There is various steps taken with regards to AI tools for the basic functions. I'll speak to that in a bit, summarizing research, evidence, and transcription. Open data as well, so providing APIs, application program interfaces to encourage others to create apps. Developing of tools and technology to measure and track the work, the impact of the work and report recommendations. An interesting thing which is currently under development is interactive data visualization. So the visualizations I've just shown you on screen are very static visualizations. They are now moving towards interactive data visualizations, which change as data come in and as time is progressing. Also, further digital participation tools are being developed, and there is a debate on a possible AI clerk or an AI committee staff providing support to Parliament. So these are the main pieces of information I wanted to share with you today, at least for the first part of my contribution. I hope that has been of interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Franklin. It was really very interesting. Ha sido bien pertinente también para la consulta que está llevando adelante nuestro Parlamento en estos momentos. Bueno, muchas gracias. Establecemos cuántos minutos para el próximo ponente. 10 minutos, ¿puede ser? ¿Quieren hacer preguntas ahora o dejamos para el final, para después? Entonces, por favor, el siguiente ponente. Please, the next presentation.
Dr. Fitzelis, please go ahead.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, dear Speaker, dear President Goni, dear Ambassador Green, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. This is Fotis Fitzelis from the Hellenic Parliament. I'm a head of research regarding documentation, which is directly dealing with parliamentary data. And apart from this, I am a professor at Universidad Austral in Buenos Aires, among others, dealing with the investigations and research around the introduction of emerging technologies, as well as artificial intelligence specifically, in parliaments. And since I also work in the Latin American region, I'm specifically concerned about the possibilities, the opportunities, but of course the challenges that arise around these extraordinary technologies. Because we know for sure, Your Excellencies, that AI is not a single technology. So it's an agglomeration of multiple technologies, approaches, and methodologies. So when we debate about this range of technologies, we better be a bit precise and define what we are speaking about. Otherwise, there are risks of miscommunication, and maybe there's also a challenge or a risk of taking rather wrong paths towards what we want to achieve. I am very well aware, Your Excellencies, that I am addressing very experienced professionals and politicians. And I'm very sure if any of you would undertake the role of trying to modernize the institution, or here we have the Parliament, but it could be any institution, all of you would begin with an inventory, meaning where are we now? And in more, let's say, business terms or scientific terms, we would speak here about a digital or AI readiness or maturity assessment. This is no new insight. Digital maturity assessments have been around for decades, I dare to say. And in the private sector, they're rather standard. Just check it out. You would see immediately. You have the Deloitte maturity assessment, the KPMG, the Accenture, the MIT maturity assessment. And more recently, these assessments have been also adjusted for the public sector. And we have now, for instance, the UN Digital Maturity Assessment, the OECD one, the European Commission, of course, has its own, it is called a Digital Maturity Assessment, indeed, DMA. And not least, we have the IPU, the Interparliamentary Union, that it developed last year. I was very fortunate to participate as an external reviewer. It has its own digital maturity assessment, which is published and open and available for utilization by member parliaments. So what this is all about? So the name, as said, says it all. It is about checking how well prepared your institution is to handle digital tools, and not least AI, of course, but also other emerging technologies. Because today it's all about AI. But you're politicians, you need to prepare your institution for the future. And by the way, Uruguay and the Parliament of Uruguay is maybe the most innovative player worldwide when it comes to future committees. The existing president has been pioneering and championing this approach to modernization. This anticipatory approach indeed has received many positive comments worldwide. And if I'm well informed, the IPU is also preparing currently, upon your own political incentive, it is preparing its own task force around anticipatory politics in future committees. That would be indeed a huge political win, not only for the Parliament of Uruguay, but I dare to say for the world community of parliaments. Because, as said, when talking about maturity assessments, we talk about where to start. And in the case of Uruguay, Your Excellencies, I would say it is rather interesting to start where you have where your most strengths lie. And I would indeed try to assess the possibilities of utilizing artificial intelligence to promote anticipatory politics, to promote your future committees' directives and recommendations as a means to plan ahead, as a means to prepare our countries and societies for what is about to come. I think this is a very interesting, since you have the expertise in that, I think this would be a very interesting point to begin with. I would not, of course, neglect easy or low-hanging fruits or easy, quick wins, like, let's say, speech-to-text transcription. These kind of technologies are already 2 decades old. They're very mature. They're ready to use. Most of them are non-generative. Kindly bear attention here. Non-generative meaning we completely evade all the problematics around ethics, data, black box, opaqueness of the models, digital sovereignty of the models, and so on. And use established, very secure from the cybersecurity perspective, which is really a very big issue, and maybe Franklin de Vries will speak a word or two after me on this. So I would not, of course, completely neglect these easy wins that I'm sure that you can implement in a very straightforward way. By the way, the Hellenic Parliament, where I work, has already, since 2021, a functional machine learning transcription system for supporting the official transcriptions of the plenary and the committees. The Parliament of Oireachtas, this is the Irish Parliament, is about, maybe Louis wants to speak a word or two on this afterwards, is about to completely omit its existing system of human transcribers and adopting completely AI for its transcription. I'm not saying this is the right way. There's no right or wrong way here. Every parliament has to do its own choices. And this is exactly this collaboration with the UK and other bilateral collaboration that you are going to undertake for sure. These serve indeed as a source of inspiration and exchange of good and bad practices. But it is you eventually that you will have to take the responsibility of implementing these solutions into your own parliaments. So my humble recommendation towards the political elite of Uruguay would be to start where your strengths lie. And by the way, apart from the future committees, a big strength lies in the championing of parliamentary diplomacy. Uruguay has been the one to lead parliamentary diplomacy in the GRULAC region out of 33 countries. Has the current presidency of the Association of the Secretary Generals of Parliament, with Jose Montero being there. And of course, not least, it has a culture of collaboration. If I'm not terribly mistaken, Your Excellency, President Goni, is from the opposition. Not many, I think, I'm not aware of any other similar approach to parliamentary leadership, to having a speaker appointed from the opposition. So you have a culture of collaboration, which will be indeed important when discussing governance frameworks for parliamentary applications of artificial intelligence. So you need to work here across party lines. And despite the obvious challenges that everywhere in the world lie, and the polarization that exists, and I'm very well aware that about the situation in Latin America and your own country, I think this established culture might be a local win that could be utilized in order to advance modernization in a way that it is maybe more efficient for Uruguay and its parliament. I would like to stop here because we can keep on doing this for a long time and getting all the details and discussing all the details. I think the first step is right. You have signed this MOU, supported by this tiny webinar. So you know whom to call. You know that we are there to support you at all times. So kindly take this initiative if you think it's necessary, and we will be picking up the phone on the other side to try to respond to any inquiries that you might have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fitsilis. Thank you for sharing your experience and recognizing the achievements and the Uruguayan difference and the milestone reached. Okay, well, we will open for questions. Sorry. There is another presentation. So please, if we can have 10 minutes for the next presentation, so then we will have nearly 20 minutes for interchanges. Thank you very much.
Buenos días. Me gustaría saludar a mi querido amigo, el presidente Rodrigo Goni, de la Cámara de Representantes del Uruguay, en cuyo nombre extiendo mi saludo a todas las diputadas y diputados de la Cámara. Asimismo, saludo a mi querido amigo, el doctor Carlos Roca Balea, director general de la Cámara de Representantes, y al doctor Rodrigo Duarte, director de Tecnología, en cuyo nombre también saludo igualmente a todos los funcionarios de la Cámara. Y también me gustaría comenzar saludando a los organizadores del encuentro, en especial Franklin de Fiese y Arlie Taylor de la Westminster Foundation for Democracy, y también su excelencia el embajador Mal Green de la Embajada Británica en Montevideo. Y si me permite también saludo a mi querido amigo Fotis Pitsilis del Parlamento de Grecia, a quien recientemente lideró el desarrollo de las directrices sobre ciberseguridad para el Parlamento. Puedo compartir que también estará con nosotros en Washington en septiembre en nuestro encuentro respecto de la modernización parlamentaria. Bueno, yo soy, como ya fue mencionado, Luis Kimaigi, yo soy el director ejecutivo de Busulatec. Nosotros somos un centro de investigación internacional dedicado a diplomacia y la modernización parlamentaria. Estamos basados en Brasil, entonces por esto pido disculpa por mi portuñol, pero espero que puedan entender apropiadamente. Y después de las excelentes intervenciones de Franklin y de Fotis, bueno, es muy difícil hablar por último, entonces me gustaría compartir una breve reflexión sobre los factores que determinan el éxito de un proceso de modernización parlamentaria y cómo está aconteciendo en Uruguay. Y si me lo permiten, creo que la Cámara de Representantes está recorriendo un camino correcto. Lo que está haciendo, porque antes de hablar de tecnología, está comprendiendo sus propias capacidades institucionales, identificando con claridad cuáles son sus prioridades para ofrecer mejores servicios a los parlamentarios, a los funcionarios, a la ciudadanía, y buscando conocer las mejores experiencias internacionales para transformarlas en acciones concretas dentro de la institución. Ese es precisamente el camino que siguen los parlamentos que logran transformar la innovación en resultados. Y Señor presidente, bajo su liderazgo, esta agenda ha adquirido un protagonismo singular y muy importante dentro de la Cámara y del Parlamento uruguayo. Existe una visión política clara de que la modernización no es un proyecto tecnológico o un proyecto político, sino un proyecto institucional del Parlamento uruguayo. Y cuando existe esta visión política, comienzan a aparecer acciones concretas. Ya podemos observar este proceso en marcha. Lo vimos, por ejemplo, con la reciente misión del Congreso de Estados Unidos a la Cámara de Representantes para compartir herramientas de gestión del proceso legislativo. Lo vimos también durante la visita del presidente Goñi al Congreso Nacional de Brasil para intercambiar experiencias sobre la utilización de herramientas de inteligencia artificial aplicadas tanto a las actividades legislativas como a la transparencia parlamentaria. Y lo vemos igualmente en el intercambio que ya se ha iniciado con el Parlamento Europeo y ahora con la Embajada Británica para compartir las mejores experiencias de las legislaturas británicas y de Westminster. Una área que también podría ofrecer valiosas oportunidades de colaboración futura, además de las que Franklin compartió muy brillantemente, es la plataforma que se llama Lawmaker, desarrollada por el Archivo Nacional del Reino Unido y por la Parliamentary Council Office de Escocia, con un reconocimiento especial a mi querido amigo Andy Beattie, Chief Parliamentary Counsel del gobierno de Escocia, y a Matt Lynch. Lawmaker es una plataforma para la redacción legislativa utilizada por diversos parlamentos del Reino Unido que permite elaborar proyectos de ley, enmiendas y legislación secundaria dentro de un entorno digital y colaborativo. La plataforma trata la legislación como datos estructurados, señor presidente, en lugar de documentos convencionales, creando las bases para la automatización avanzada y la incorporación futura de aplicaciones de inteligencia artificial, como muy recurrentemente hablamos en nuestras charlas. Este enfoque ya permite funcionalidades como la gestión automática de referencias cruzadas y de modificaciones legislativas, además de abrir el camino para el uso de inteligencia artificial en tareas de apoyo a la técnica legislativa. A medida que la Cámara de Representantes continúa avanzando en su agenda de transformación digital, un intercambio de experiencias con el equipo de Lawmaker, por ejemplo, podría aportar conocimientos muy valiosos sobre el diseño de entornos modernos de redacción legislativa, la implementación de modelos de datos legislativos estructurados y la construcción de la arquitectura institucional necesaria para ofrecer los servicios legislativos potenciados por inteligencia artificial. Y también creo que es importante destacar un otro paso. Aunque nuestros parlamentos tengan diferencias constitucionales, procedimentales y también distintas realidades políticas, por ejemplo, de un sistema de Westminster, de un sistema como de nosotros en Latinoamérica, todos producimos legislación, todos ejercemos las funciones de control, prestamos apoyo técnico a los parlamentarios y buscamos acercar el Parlamento de la ciudadanía. Por eso resulta completamente natural que exista un intercambio permanente de experiencias entre instituciones legislativas. Sin embargo, compartir experiencias no es suficiente. El verdadero desafío consiste en traducir esas experiencias internacionales en cambios concretos dentro de la organización. Y ese proceso también ya puede observarse aquí en la Cámara de Representantes de Uruguay. Vemos a una institución que fortalece el papel estratégico de su equipo de tecnología con el doctor Rodrigo Duarte, que le proporciona los medios necesarios para desarrollar proyectos estructurantes y que entiende que la transformación digital exige planificación, continuidad y visión de largo plazo. Y aquí quisiera detenerme en un aspecto que considero fundamental. Cuando hablamos de grandes proyectos de modernización parlamentaria, no estamos hablando de un único proyecto, estamos hablando de una cartera de iniciativas de corto, mediano, largo plazo, con distintos niveles de complejidad y de inversión. Existen proyectos cuyos los resultados son visibles rápidamente y generan beneficios inmediatos para los ciudadanos, los parlamentarios, los funcionarios. Pero también existen proyectos estructurantes que, aunque requieren inversiones más importantes y cuyos resultados no siempre son visibles en el corto plazo, constituyen la base sobre la cual se constituirá el Parlamento del futuro. Pienso, por ejemplo, en el diseño del proceso legislativo digital y la construcción de una sólida gobernanza de datos. Es precisamente esta infraestructura de información la que permitirá que el Parlamento incorpore de forma segura y sostenible las distintas aplicaciones de inteligencia artificial que hoy comienzan a surgir. Por eso, creo que es importante reconocer que estos proyectos estructurantes son una inversión en capacidad institucional. Y una vez que esta información se encuentre organizada, estructurada y disponible, las oportunidades pasan a ser enormes. Podremos ofrecer mejores servicios a los parlamentarios mediante asistentes legislativos para la búsqueda de información, de documentos de análisis, herramientas que ya existen en algunos parlamentos. Podremos contar con asistente para apoyar la redacción legislativa, como comenté, del Lawmaker de Escocia, herramientas capaces de colaborar en el análisis de la constitucionalidad de los proyectos de ley, sistemas que faciliten la recuperación de precedentes parlamentarios y presupuesto, nuevas formas de apoyar el trabajo cotidiano de los equipos técnicos que asesoran los parlamentarios. Pero las oportunidades no terminan allí. También podremos ofrecer mejores servicios a la ciudadanía. La inteligencia artificial puede ayudar a traducir textos legislativos complejos a un lenguaje claro y accesible. Puede facilitar la recuperación de información dentro del sitio web parlamentario o de las aplicaciones móviles. Puede permitir que cualquier ciudadano encuentre con rapidez el proyecto de ley, la comisión o el documento que necesita. Y también fortalecer el propio funcionamiento interno del Parlamento. No quisiera extenderme mucho más, señor presidente, pero me gustaría concluir tomando una idea con la que inicié esa intervención. Uruguay ha ocupado históricamente una posición de liderazgo en materia de innovación parlamentaria en nuestra región y en todo el mundo. Lo demostró hace años, como muy bien comentó mi amigo Fotis Fitsilis, con iniciativas pioneras como las comisiones del futuro por muchos años. El presidente Goñi hace muchos años también es un gran defensor de esta agenda en organismos interparlamentarios como la UIP, Parlaméricas, la OEA. Entonces no es una gran sorpresa cuando vemos este protagonismo de Uruguay. Y hoy, presidente, bajo su liderazgo, observamos el inicio de una nueva etapa, una etapa orientada no solamente a la modernización estructural de la Cámara, sino también a preparar la institución para incorporar de manera responsable las nuevas tecnologías. Con estas reflexiones concluyo mi intervención. Le agradezco muy sinceramente su atención y quedo a disposición para cualquier consulta o comentario. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis. Estamos sumamente interesados con todo lo que nos han venido planteando, también agradecidos. Dado que tenemos 20 minutos, porque estamos terminando, we are going to finish 12:30. So please, I know that we have a presentation from Franklin de Vries again. May I ask you to short the presentation in 5 minutes in order to have time to allow questions from the participants? It's okay? The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for your patience. I will indeed be very short for this second presentation. A lot of things have already been mentioned by the colleagues, so I will be just highlighting the most relevant things with specifically to how artificial intelligence is being used currently around the globe. Let me just see if this works here on my slides. Yes. So there are various reasons why parliaments are looking towards introducing AI with regards to efficiency, transparency, oversight. I think this was already mentioned before, and I think these are very valid reasons. I think it's also important to look at the figures at the moment. And we see, for instance, according to a recent report from the IPU, 70% of the parliaments currently are publishing legislative information online, but less than 50% also have interoperable legislative data systems. So there is still some work to do. How parliaments are using AI at the moment, I think it's at 3 levels, and Dr. Fotis mentioned that already. At administrative level in terms of transcription, translation, classification, but also at legislative level and at participatory level. And in terms of the legislative level, I think there AI tools are being applied with regards to analyzing amendments, checking legal consistency, and retrieval of information. And I think several parliaments are doing this, and there is a lot of useful lessons learned from that. And then with regards to citizen interaction, there are a number of parliaments. I think the Brazilian Congress is probably the most advanced in its ecosystem. The most surprising place probably where AI is being used, I think, is in the Parliament of Ukraine, where despite the war and despite the security risks, Parliament is still functioning, is using a lot of online means to reach out to citizens, receiving tens of thousands of responses, and are then using AI to analyze these submissions and these responses. So here we have an overview of all the use cases of AI around the world in research and information services and legislative drafting, as I just mentioned, in committee and plenary work, and also in administration and citizen services. There are also a number of challenges. I think one of them is, of course, the speed of change in AI. What we know today might be no longer valid in 6 months or in a year, so that the result of that is that there is a risk of a concentration in a small group of knowledgeable individuals of the knowledge on AI. So there is need for continuous knowledge and capacity building in Parliament. And the risks and the challenges are indeed technical challenges with regards to keeping our ICT infrastructure up to date, but also regulatory and ethical challenges. And so here we have an example again of how technology is used in the legislative cycle, and specifically the use of AI, from predictive modeling and data analytics to analysis of legislation and corporate status. In post-enactment analysis, also here we have a lot of applications with regards to data analytics and tracking implementation and outcomes, to various tools around citizen engagement, which I mentioned before. To address these issues, and that's my main point here, is we have published these guidelines for AI in Parliament, and Dr. Fotis Vitslis was the main author of these 40 guidelines, which are now available in 10 languages, including in Spanish. I put a link in the chat to these guidelines. They are organized into 6 sections: ethical principles, artificial general intelligence, privacy, governance, system design, and capacity building. And then it provides answers to 4 main questions. So why does this guideline matter? Are there any known examples of the implementation? How can the guideline be implemented? And any other further considerations and recommendations. So that you find as a way to make sure that these guidelines can function at a modular and adaptive framework. Here we have an example. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I think it's available for those of you who want to read through that. So in conclusion, I would say AI adoption is not a tech project. It's very much an institutional change process. So that means effective change means piloting rather than having a kind of big bang rollout. Also establishing cross-parliamentary governance bodies to ensure the oversight on the introduction of AI rather than siloed initiatives, and then continuous learning as we are doing today rather than individual sessions. So this, I think, would be my main message, and to make it very concrete and offer you also a very concrete suggestion. We are currently preparing for our certified course with the University of London on legislative scrutiny, AI and digital lawmaking, which I think will provide a further opportunity for learning and exchange with other practitioners from around the world. So this is what I wanted to share just very briefly, and I hope that that was of interest. Thank you very much.
Well, we will open the floor for questions.
Bien, primero que nada y muy concreto, celebro que esta instancia se esté realizando aquí en la Cámara de Representantes. Agradezco especialmente a los expositores por tan ricas exposiciones. De todo me han surgido varias dudas que iba anotando, pero principalmente, y destacando esto de que es muy interesante el potencial de la digitalización y de la IA para los parlamentos en cuanto a que sean más transparentes y desarrollen nuevas formas de escucha activa de la ciudadanía. Creo que también plantean algunos desafíos, y hay dos consultas bien concretas. La primera, ¿cómo evaluamos a través de estas herramientas la calidad de esa participación? Esto sobre todo lo que tiene que ver con la primera exposición realizada. Y en particular, ¿cómo se mide la incidencia de las decisiones del Parlamento en base a las distintas consultas? Y también cómo sabemos qué tan representativas son las opiniones recogidas y cómo evitamos que también las consultas que se realizan a través de estas herramientas queden concentradas en el acceso a determinados nichos o sectores que realmente estén interesados en esas propuestas y no en base a la opinión de la ciudadanía en general. Y después, algo que lo planteo cómo se puede resolver y anticiparse, es a medida que se adoptan estas herramientas del Parlamento y la inteligencia artificial facilita la interpretación masiva de contenidos y de opiniones, ¿qué mecanismos pueden garantizar que estos sistemas no sean manipulados para presentarse como una expresión genuina de la opinión ciudadana y en realidad respondan a campañas organizadas para influir en la toma de decisiones de los parlamentos? Por ahí mis consultas.
Thank you, Fabián. Bradetti, por favor, another question. Do you have one?
Gracias. Bueno, muchas gracias. Mi nombre es Paula de Armas, soy diputada aquí en el Parlamento uruguayo. Es un placer escuchar este tipo de exposiciones que son muy ricas en cuanto al contenido y a la experiencia. Uruguay es muy tradicional, eso no hay duda, pero sí tenemos que ir avanzando hacia estas cosas. Ahora cuando decían salir un poco de este recuento de rendimiento de lo que hacemos acá en grandes libros de muchas páginas que de pronto no son vistas por la ciudadanía. Creo que la inteligencia artificial podría ayudarnos muchísimo a poder mostrar realmente cuál es el trabajo que hacen los legisladores en el Parlamento, que queda invisible a los ojos de los uruguayos. Y en este sentido, y un poco conectando con mi compañero, la cercanía. La política hoy Uruguay enfrenta un desafío del descreimiento y creo que es por falta de conocimiento de qué es lo que se hace. Y está bueno esto de la cercanía al pueblo, de poder nosotros también desde el Parlamento obtener mucha más información de lo que siente y lo que piensa realmente la gente. Pero hay algo que me preocupa y tiene que ver con cómo comunicamos nosotros. Aquí tenemos una democracia muy rica en la que el respeto es el elemento esencial y la libertad y la igualdad de participación, de opinión, es algo que para Uruguay es muy importante. Entonces me gustaría saber si la implementación de estas nuevas técnicas no eliminan de alguna manera esa garantía que hoy tenemos, esa forma de trabajar que hoy tenemos, creo que me parece un elemento crucial al momento de incorporar estas nuevas tecnologías a nuestro Parlamento, que no existan diferencias entre unos legisladores y otros. Creo que eso sería algo a ver y que me encantaría poder escucharlos a ellos si han tenido alguna experiencia en este sentido, porque es realmente muy importante. Acá nadie es más que nadie, sino que todos somos representantes de una misma sociedad y eso es lo que no podemos perder. Muchas gracias.
Another one. ¿Alguien más que quiera preguntar? Ya tenemos varias. Sí, pasamos entonces, please, if you...
Shall I take the floor to respond to the question by the MP concerning the security and of the information and of the processes? Let me start with that. Indeed, Your Excellency, you tackled maybe the most significant issue that anybody currently faces in the digital age. And by anybody, I mean not only persons, but also companies, legal entities, and of course, parliaments. And this is no other issue than the digital security and safety of your information and maybe of your digital presence as such. This is no new challenge, I would say. And to tackle this, there have been a lot of processes and approaches that have been developed in the past at least couple of decades under the broader term of cybersecurity. In other words, how can we as people and we as institutions, parliaments, can protect ourselves from any malicious actors or adversaries that might want to tamper with our data and our processes, and not least our electoral processes. As you might know, cybersecurity is does not concern only the digital realm. Cybersecurity is a very complex field that entails also the physical security as well. So it's a hybrid approach that it's necessary. There's no physical security currently imaginable without the digital dimension, and no digital security imaginable without the physical dimension. I don't want to get into details because it can get very complicated, but I would say only one, before providing the floor further to my colleagues. Whatever we have discussed today will eventually have no meaning at all if your parliament cannot achieve to have a sufficient high level of cybersecurity established. AI will have no meaning if you cannot put in place and govern a level of acceptable cybersecurity. There cannot be an absolute security level. It cannot be, because by definitions, parliaments have to be transparent. And how can you have transparency as parliaments evangelize and need to be open, and at the same time have established cybersecurity principles like the trust no one principle, zero trust principle. So you have to have a balance. And this balance has to be an equilibrium. And this equilibrium needs to be established for every parliament differently, because every parliament is different from another. This would mean that you have to reinforce yesterday your entire processes around digital handlings, your data, your processes. You need cybersecurity experts. You need to train your ordinary people, including employees and members of parliament, of how to deal with the digital dangers. So eventually, one of the most important things that one needs to do, one as a parliament, as an institution, is capacity building, is to train its people, various trainings. Leaders need different training, more strategic oriented. Members of parliament need different training because they are exposed to the everyday dangers of the digital society and the realm. Misinformation, disinformation, you know that better than I do, actually. And of course, the employees need to be aware of the dangers of utilizing unsanctioned AI tools. This is called shadow AI, tools that the parliament has not sanctioned, allowed. Everybody works with them. But who knows the dangers of utilizing, I don't want to say the names, all these tools for official uses. This can get very dangerous very quickly. For instance, the German parliament, the Bundestag, has developed a rule book, and actually, if you use as an employee unsanctioned or not allowed artificial intelligence tools, you are facing disciplinary procedures. I'm not saying that this is the right way, but I think it is worth establishing a mechanism to assess all these dangers, specifically for Uruguay, because these dangers are different in Africa, different in the US and other parts of the Americas, different in Europe. So this has to be localized, and I cannot say often enough how important cybersecurity will be in the future. And for this very reason, we have published with my colleagues, among others, Franklin de Vries and Stéphane Gagnon from Quebec, from Canada, the first very comprehensive publication on cybersecurity for parliaments. And of course, Madam Member of Parliament, you're absolutely right. Nobody reads these publications. I know. This is why the persons that need to be taking these decisions need to be aware that they exist, so that they are assessing their usefulness. These are not general purpose publications. These publications, and maybe Franklin, we can make sure that a few copies of these publications, that, by the way, are being published in Spanish as we speak, can reach the Parliament of Uruguay in due time, so that they can be assessed by the officials. Thank you very much, and kindly excuse that it took a bit longer than needed. I cannot state often enough how important this is going to be for the future of Parliament. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, agradecemos mucho por este webinar, por este encuentro, por las presentaciones. Vamos a continuar en otras instancias profundizando. Nos quedan muchas preguntas, sobre todo las que se hacía el diputado Bravetti al comienzo, pero bueno, nos quedamos sin tiempo y bueno, podemos continuar. Así que muy agradecidos a todos, a Westminster Foundation for Democracy, a la Embajada y a todos quienes acá en el Parlamento Uruguayo, legisladores y directores del área tecnológica y asesores nos han acompañado. Muchas gracias. Seguiremos en contacto. Embajador, ¿quiere finalizar? ¿Quiere finalizar? Muchas gracias. Nos vemos pronto.